Welcome to Root Cause Medicine, presented by Spirit of Health, transforming lives through real health solutions.
Okay.
Hi, Mike. Awkwardness, let it begin.
Yeah. You just gotta jump in and start, I guess.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Vaughn, you've been doing this quite a while now, helping out people on this journey with health. So tell me a little bit about what got you into starting down this track on the health. I know this is not what you've done always. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that backstory.
Yeah, it's a cool story. I was definitely not into health the majority of my life. I was living in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
I was in my early 30s. I'm from Kansas City, but at this time in my life, I was living in Las Vegas.
What were you doing there?
I was working a corporate job. I was in transportation, freight brokerage.
Okay.
And I was pretty miserable. It kind of all looked good from the outside. I played tennis and I was good at it and I had a good job and made good money, but I was just pretty miserable. So basically what happened is I was married at the time. I chose to get divorced, just as out of my own selfishness, basically. Went and lived with another girl, was doing all the Las Vegas things, all the bad things, all the things they say about Las Vegas.
Yeah.
I did those things. So not a good time in my life. And I came back to Kansas City for Christmas. My girlfriend at the time couldn't come. And there was an ice storm, so I couldn't go see my relatives up in Iowa, which is what I would normally do. And some guys I hadn't seen in 10 years from high school invited me over to their house for like a Bible study. I was like, cool, I'll go check it out. And I had quit my corporate job. I was working at a health food store and I actually loved it. I was like learning about herbs and I was making $10 an hour and I didn't care because I was happy for the first time just
Wow.
working at a health food store. So
What made you choose the health food store?
just because I don't honestly even know. Like I just didn't like the corporate life and I wanted to do something simple and basic. And I went to work at this health food store and found out like I was excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So it seemed random. Clearly now I know it wasn't random.
Yeah.
It was God, but it seemed random at the time. So I went over to this friend's house and was just talking to them about health and nutrition and all the things I was learning. And I remember they read Genesis 1:29, which is that all seed-bearing plants, they shall be yours for food. And I started telling my friends, like, man, I feel weird. I feel kind of tingly. I said, I almost feel like I'm floating, or I feel kind of like I'm drunk, like was the feeling I was getting. And my friend was like, oh, that's the Holy Spirit encountering you. And I was like, I didn't even know what that, I had no idea what that even meant.
Yeah. Wow.
But it was really, really real. And so they actually laid hands on me. I gave my life to the Lord. And it was good timing because, I was doing all the Vegas stuff and it was not a good time in my life. So went back to Vegas and things got really weird really quick. My girlfriend thought I went bongo, nutso. She was questioning everything. I couldn't drink alcohol. I was like Jack Daniel's bottle a week, couldn't touch alcohol. If I walked into an establishment where people were swearing, it literally felt like the words were piercing my skin like a dagger. So I would have to leave because it was painful to hear people swear. And I was like the sailor, every other word, cuss word.
Yeah.
Like that was me. So it's funny how many years later, like people hearing my story, like, you don't know people's past and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was you. But like, yeah, I was a mess. Gambling, strip clubs, like, the whole works. And I probably shouldn't be here, but the Lord saved me. So yeah, it was just really radical transformation. I owned 2 houses. It was in the housing crash of 2008. So my $500,000 house short sold for $200,000. Wow. So I was backwards, upside down, confused. But what was happening was very real. And so I declared bankruptcy. And before I left Vegas, I went and lived in the mountains for a month in Mount Charleston, right outside of Vegas, and just camped for a month in the woods. I love nature.
Yeah.
I was working at this health food store. Totally had no idea what I was going to do with my life. And in the middle of the night, I literally woke up out of a dead sleep, and out of my mouth came the word Spirit of Health. No idea what that meant. And
That's where it all began.
that's where it all began. And I didn't want to run away from Vegas. And, you know, I was trying to, you know, talk to God and figure this thing out. And first time I felt like I really heard from the Lord was move back to Kansas City. So I took a month and I went to Hawaii, and I backpacked through 3 islands in Hawaii, went on all the hardest trails.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's kind of like my find God moment,
Yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, I did that. And then I moved back to Kansas City, and my dad was retiring from his job of 30 years. And I said, do you want to start a business together? Kind of told him about it was kind of funny because my parents weren't really going to church anymore. And I'm like, this is real. You guys got to go to church. Like, you got to make sure you know Jesus. Like,
Yeah,
it
the
was like,
radical on fire,
totally. I was like intense.
new baby Christian.
Exactly. I was like,
That's awesome.
Did a Bible study with my parents every Saturday, having no idea what I was doing. Anyway, it was fun. It was a cool season. But actually, my dad, you know, recommitted his life to the Lord, and you know, both my parents got, you know, touched by like my
amen.
transformation. You know.
So cool.
Yeah. So my dad retired. We opened Spirit of Health together, and in 2010, in the summer of 2010, just a small little office. We had like literally 200 square feet was our store and my office. Started doing consultations. I was working out of a wellness center with a colon hydrotherapist, and we were kind of just doing this thing together. And yeah, the humble beginnings, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what started me on this journey that started Spirit of Health. And so it was the Lord. It was the Lord calling me into something. I mean, I was 230 pounds. I got my picture. I call it my fat picture. But I have multiple pictures of me when I was 230 pounds. I ate fast food. I mean, I didn't care about anything. But because I was played tennis, and I was in shape and I was athletic, like I didn't think anything of it, or I didn't have any quote unquote health issues, you know. But yeah, that started my journey. We started Spirit of Health, and that was now 13 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. I remember seeing that picture of you, the fat picture. We'll have to bust that out sometime and share it, because it's like,
We
wow,
should.
it doesn't even look like you.
No,
It's like a whole different person.
totally.
And it was,
And it was.
like, in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah.
so cool.
Absolutely.
So it's been like 13 years. I know I met you around that time when you were in that original building, and you know, just when I first kind of came across you, saw you speak at doing some classes, and got to come and buy some herbs from you originally. So yeah, humble beginnings, but now that you've grown and been able to help so many people, and you know, the business has grown a lot and your outreach has grown. But yeah, just what would you say like your mission is, and what's really driven you on this, and what's your mission to help and reach people?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm kind of a visionary, also kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy, winging it. Not saying that's good or bad. It's probably good and bad. But, you know, I did Spirit of Health for 8-9 years and never had a vision statement, never had a mission statement, never had a set of core values or core beliefs or a creed or and so, you know,
Just
you
winging it.
were a part of, you know, creating that when we
Yeah.
did that like 3 years ago. That was a really powerful time. But I'll just say it real quick, because I think it's great for people to know who we are and what we do. But our vision is partnering with God to bring healing and restoration to all creation, which is kind of a big, grandiose
Yeah.
thing that only
That's
God
awesome.
God can do. And then our mission, which is what we want to work on doing all day, every day as a company, is to declare God's rightful place in medicine through education and empowerment.
Yeah.
So without getting too deep into that topic, because that's obviously a big thing, but yeah, there's a lot of deception out there. There's a lot of ways that we can heal the body. There's a man-made medical system that we've come to trust, and I would say now, even more so recently, come to distrust for many various
Right.
reasons.
A lot of people questioning.
So people are looking for alternatives. They're looking for, hey, is the natural health thing a real thing? Is that good? Is there science behind that? Is there proof behind that? Does that really work? Is that better? Is it not? So I think a lot of people are opening their eyes to kind of this reality of that there's actually a couple of different systems up there that aren't the same. You know, the way man's doing things with his pharmaceutical drugs and his invasive procedures versus the way God created things with nature and sunshine and water and foods and herbs. And, so anyway, it's just fun to be part of this, this world, this bridge, this crossing over, this, people questioning things, discovering what's real, what's not, what's best. And so, I'm very thankful that the Lord called me into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Searching for truth and trying to bring truth to people. I know that's a big part of your heart. It's like what you're really passionate about, finding truth, sharing it with people, because so many of us have been deceived
Right.
and just, taught to believe certain things and not question it. And it's like, question everything. And,
Mhm.
You end up finding some interesting narratives that we've unearthed with, the history of the medical industry and just so many things. And,
Yep.
with the newer stuff going on the last couple of years related to, the COVID, which we may talk about another time, but
Yeah.
a lot of interesting things going on in our world.
Yeah. Totally.
Sure.
Totally. And I've gone down, all those rabbit holes, the quote unquote conspiracy theories, looking at the history of medicine, the Rockefellers. I mean, it's pretty fascinating if you dig into it
Yeah.
and choose to want to believe those things. But the reality is the information's out there. The proof, so to speak, is out there. But ultimately, my heart and what we're trying to accomplish is that we want people to see that there's a better way than a man-made system of pharmaceutical drugs and symptom treatment, and that God, actually, when he created the Garden of Eden, he said, it is good. And everything we had was there in a garden, which is nature.
Mm-hmm.
So now man is like, no, I got better things. I got these drugs and I got these vaccines and I got these are better. And I don't think, honestly, that's just me. I just don't think that's biblical. I don't think that's
Yeah.
godly. I don't think that's how God ever intended it. He's like, no, I gave you all these plants and trees and food and medicine and water and sun, and it's good, and you have everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like we've veered from that quite a bit.
And it's interesting how so many people have been taught that modern medicine, this is the way, and then all these natural things are alternative medicine.
Right.
I find that funny because quote unquote alternative medicine, natural things, herbs, food, using food for healing, sunlight, grounding, nature. These have been the things that people have used for thousands of years. This is what's been the norm in every healing system, in different
Yep.
cultures, Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic in India, all across the world. And just because, medicine's been around 100, 150 years, now they're the thing and everything else is alternative. No, it's like the other way around.
Totally.
And medicine is what's alternative because it's a lot against what God's trying to do with the body.
Yep.
And so a big reason why, we're doing this, this root cause podcast, because we're talking about the true root causes and what's really causing breakdowns in the body, illness, chronic issues, disease, and really unearthing those. And it's not about a deficiency of some man-made chemical, which you talk about a lot. And so anyway, fascinated by that stuff. But
yeah, I love saying that, I don't think somebody's deficient in, aspirin or Motrin or Claritin or, there's something going on.
Yeah.
And we're designed in God's image. So what is our body trying to tell us? And are we listening to that? And do we care about that to get better? Or we're like, no, let's just take something to make that go away.
it's trying to mask everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So I would love to get into that because you're big in, health and doing consultations and helping people and seeing people that are really sick. And so, what has become your passion and your specialty? Because you've been with us for, 8 years now. So what is, and the Lord's brought you on this journey with us. And so what's been your passion lately in health?
Yeah. I think just, there's so many hurting people out there in this world and just with not many answers to what's going on. Their health is failing them. They're not having the energy to be and do the things they want to do and be there for their family and to do different things. And, and a lot of people are in fear and they're running to the medical industry and they're not getting a lot of answers. And so I love taking these challenging cases where people are left kind of hopeless from medical doctors And you're just going to have this the rest of your life. It's going to just get worse. We can maybe slow the progression down, but it's like, no, I'm a believer, we're a believer that there are answers. There are true answers, things that actually cause this. And if we can identify those, and over the years we've been able to come up with and understand a lot of these main root causes, but being able to identify for that particular person what's going on, and then we can treat and work with their body as a whole, amazing things happen. I mean, yeah, God's our healer, but he also designed our bodies to heal themselves. They need the right things. We talk about food as medicine and herbs, so we need to be able to give the body the right things. And then the other side of it that I think a lot of people miss is identifying these obstructions in the body that are blocking the body from doing what it was designed to do. So identifying and actually helping the body remove that, and the body can come back and heal itself. Like we know that, everybody knows and just believes it because they see it every day. You get a cut, you get a bruise, you get something, even a broken bone, and it will heal itself. Now, over time, if people's health is bad, those wounds heal slower and slower. And it's the same like that in other areas of our body. So amazing things. And I know we've both seen just amazing miracles, basically, is
Yes.
what other people would say. And it basically is that, but once you identify those root causes, so I love those challenging cases and just helping give people hope. There are answers. There is healing to be had. And then helping them walk down that process. So, and I work with a lot of, chronic fatigue. That's become a big passion of mine too, but really all chronic illness. But part of my own story was dealing with chronic fatigue. So, in my 20s, I started having some symptoms, and initially it started kind of mild and didn't think a lot of it. Just thought, well, maybe this is kind of normal. I'm in the working world. Everybody is a little tired. They're downing coffee. They're slamming energy drinks just to make it by. Maybe this is just the norm, but it started, and I came from being very high energy, athletic background. I was in sales. So I was in freight sales. I know we talked about kind of interesting.
Yep.
We come from the same industry.
I know,
we
that's
were
wild.
Yeah. You were a competitor of mine.
That's right.
It's funny, but
I think we bought your company, didn't we?
you did eventually. Got to say it like that, huh? But yeah, I was a high-performing salesperson at this freight company. And so I was used to just relying on my own strength and mind and quickness. And, but that started to diminish, and I was having a harder time, recalling things, my words, just lower on energy. I mean, I remember in the depths of all that, I was so exhausted. I would try to, sleep through the night. I would get up at the absolute last second I could. I had it all timed down to like basically just throw on my clothes, brush my teeth, do my hair, and run out the door and go straight to work. And then I would come home. I started taking longer than an hour lunch break. So it would take like an hour and a half, hour and 45. I would come home, eat, get in bed, go back to sleep, just trying to rest as much as I can, set my alarm, get back up, go back to work again. And yeah, it was rough for a while. And I remember kind of like, man, what is going on? What is, I'm not myself. I don't feel right. And, but just trying to, for a while, just mask things. For a while, it was, I wasn't a coffee person back then, but it was energy drinks, and I thought I was being healthier doing the 0 calories, 0 sugar. It's full of junk, artificial sweeteners and that kind of stuff, but Monster energy drinks. And so that was my go-to for a while, and sugars. So I was kind of relying on these things to try to get me through the day. And eventually I just started learning. And so, it took me way longer to kind of understand and realize what was going on, and changing my diet, changing my habits, doing some detoxification. And so, I'm very passionate about helping people understand what's really going on with chronic fatigue and how to get out of that. Because so many people, if you go to the medical doctors, they just don't have many answers for that.
Right. So what have you found to be some of the, we talk about root causes. So why do people have chronic fatigue?
Yeah, so it could be a combination of things, and we've identified over 30 different root causes that can be a part of it. But I would say a lot of it comes down to toxicities. So toxicities, infectious organisms, I think those are the biggest categories, but also deficiencies, and not just deficiencies. Like I think people hear that and they think, oh, certain vitamins, minerals, and definitely B vitamins play a big part of that, but other vitamins and minerals, but then also deficiencies of sunlight, deficiencies of sleep, deficiencies of movement. Like God designed us to be in the sun. Are so much research behind what happens with our body and our skin absorbing the sun and powering our mitochondria and stuff like that. So, but yeah, deficiencies of sleep. I mean, Americans and, I'd imagine in other parts of the world too, are chronically not sleeping enough. So, but the toxins is a huge one. And a lot of the research points to that. I've seen a lot of research that says 70 to 75% of chronic illness and cancers are caused by toxins.
Wow.
So we're in a toxic world. And yeah, some of the research I've seen says we're exposed to on average 86,000 plus chemicals on a daily basis. And most of these haven't even been properly researched and understood by the governing bodies. So, and it's just piling up more and more and more. And we're seeing this accelerate more, especially in the last 10 years, because they're just dumping more and more toxins in our environment, in our water, in the air, in our food. And it's crazy what kind of things we allow in our food. Even in Europe, they ban so many different things. You know, and they still deal with some over there, but here it's way more lax. So yeah, toxicity is a huge one. So that can break down to environmental toxins, chemicals, heavy metals, but also toxins that are produced by other organisms, biotoxins. So stuff like mold mycotoxins, I find is a huge one. A lot of research has been done on that too. And yeah, in my experience and the research, the majority of people with chronic fatigue have some level of mold mycotoxins in their system. You know, just the way they build houses here in America and the water damage. I forget the exact number, but I want to say it's 60 or 70% of the houses in the US have water damage and mold in them. And people don't realize it's not so much the mold itself, but it's that mold creates what's called mycotoxins as a toxic byproduct. It releases these in the air. It's part of the way it defends its territory in nature. It's part of how it naturally does it.
Survival.
Yeah, it's releasing these toxins to try to keep everything else away so that it can have its territory. But in enclosed buildings like our houses, and yeah, with the sheetrock and the way they build houses, I mean, there's just a lot of water damage and it getting in that sheetrock and creating a lot of moisture that's holding on for a while. So this mold is able to rapidly grow, create these mycotoxins in an enclosed area with not a lot of ventilation. You know, we don't not a lot of people just have their windows open all the time, and you know, everything's very enclosed. So we're breathing high amounts of these mold mycotoxins, and they're just extremely toxic to the whole detoxification drainage pathways, put a lot of pressure on the liver. They're known to be nephrotoxic, toxic to the liver, or the kidneys, hepatotoxic, toxic to the liver, toxic to the immune system, and put a lot of pressure on our mitochondria. So basically, you know, and I've done some webinars, I talk about what chronic fatigue really is mitochondrial dysfunction.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's our mitochondria that produce energy. Mitochondria in every cell of the body, except for red blood cells. But basically every other cell of the body, we have mitochondria in different amounts. But our mitochondria is like our powerhouse. It's our power generator that actually creates energy. ATP is the energy kind of equivalent that the cell puts out, that the mitochondria put out. So at the end of the day, yeah, chronic fatigue is just pressure on the mitochondria, not functioning optimally. And mold mycotoxins are a huge thing to just hamper and damage the mitochondria, don't allow them to go through their processes properly producing ATP. So
let me tell you if I feel like I'm hearing this right, because Cellcore, who we love, and we just went to a conference, they talk about being intentionally disruptive. And so, you know, we kind of mentioned like conspiracy theory and stuff like that, but it sounds to me like man creates the problem, right? 80,000+ chemical toxins, herbicides, pesticides, glyphosate, drywall that you talked about.
Yeah.
Like man creates the problem, everybody's sick, and now man presents the solutions. Right? Pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, right? So I guess I'm questioning, like, where's God in this picture?
Yeah, right.
Did he cause all these problems? Does God have the solution, or does man have the solution? You know?
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know we talk about that, partnering with God, right? And
right.
I'd love to hear you expand on that a little bit more too. But yeah, these toxins are just huge. And so, you know, in our building materials in our house and our furniture, everything's off-gassing chemicals. And so, and of course, God designed our bodies with pathways to deal with this type of stuff. Like he knew we were going to be exposed to toxins. It's not a surprise to God. He created us with so many amazing pathways with our lymphatic system, liver, kidneys, all these filtering to keep the body clean and to, you know, so the body tries everything it can to protect ourselves and eliminate things. But eventually people reach this level where things are building up more than the body can handle. And it starts accumulating in the body, causing different issues, putting pressure on the mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
So I love kind of shining a light on that and helping people identify and doing labs and showing people their toxicities and what they are, and then coming up with solutions to help them. The infectious organisms is a big category too. But I think
Let me ask you a question on that, because I think you're going into it, but I was just going to put you on the spot here and ask you, what are like top 3 reasons people have chronic fatigue? You might have just mentioned one.
yeah, I mean, mold mycotoxins, I think a big reason. And I would say on a lifestyle side of things, not sleeping enough. That combination of lifestyle not proper. We're living the modern world. We're very disconnected to operating the way we're supposed to. So it's this lack of sleep, lack of movement, lack of sunlight, all that kind of stuff. But then, just environmental toxins in general, infectious organisms, other deficiencies.
Yeah. Those are big categories,
Yeah.
Infectious organisms, chemical, environmental toxins, like those are huge categories.
Yeah. A lot to break down with that. And that's why, we do what we do is we help people understand and how to deal with these and the complexities of it. And so because people can easily be overwhelmed by all this information and not really knowing what to do. But the infectious organisms, I mean, we've seen our fair share of this kind of stuff from, parasites. And no, they don't just exist in third world countries. They're here in the U.S. too. It's like we know when we have animals, right? We have dogs. We need to go get them dewormed. They need heartworm medicine. We need to, we see them poop out parasites sometimes.
That doesn't happen in humans, though, right?
And so many medical doctors will say that. I've heard stories and have my, some of my own clients, as I'm sure you have, where they've gone to the medical doctors and talked about parasites. And parasites aren't in humans.
Do you have proof? Have you seen pictures?
Oh yeah, we've seen pictures. And seeing them out of, myself and my wife. And it's interesting stuff, but people see the power in that. And when stuff comes out, it's like, better out than in. But parasites are a big deal. And I think, a lot of these infectious organisms, I think, are becoming more and more of an issue. And I think it's because of the toxicities that are messing with our system and our drainage pathways and our immune system. And then when our immune system is down and we're exposed to these things, again, like God designed us with filtering capabilities to filter out toxins, but he also designed us with a lot of awesome processes with our immune system, starting with, our mucosal areas, our mouth, our enzymes, our strong stomach acid, our gut microbiome that makes up 70 to 75% of our immune system. But, when those systems are down and we get exposed to these toxic or these infectious organisms, they can now take up root and our bodies can't fight them off and they can become an issue. So we need to clear some of these infectious organisms while we're doing the rest of it. But the toxicities a lot of time create the environment for these things to flourish. So parasites, pathogenic bacteria, yeast, fungus, mold. So we can have the mold mycotoxin exposure, but then people can actually have colonization of mold in their body and their gut. And we see that a lot in the gut. So and specific organisms like Lyme disease, the Borrelia bacteria, and other Lyme co-infections that are transmitted by these biting insects, organisms. So
how do you discover these things? How do you find out what people have going on?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I know we've tried to figure out better ways over the years to do this, but I know now we've partnered with one of our favorite ways is to do some specialty lab testing with companies that we know have the right validation behind them, and they can prove their accuracy and specificity. And so you can actually test for levels of environmental toxins, mold mycotoxins, infectious organisms, so that we can identify. We talk about, test, don't guess. Although we have other ways too, muscle testing and stuff like that. That's really fascinating, where the body can respond to different things just by, doing muscle testing with the arm or other ways, and seeing the body respond to different toxins. And so, we use a variety of things like that, but I definitely like the labs where it's concrete, it's hard. It makes believers out of your clients too, when they actually see the numbers. Oh my gosh, 5 times the toxic level in this particular toxin. It makes it real that they're more willing to make changes when it's a reality like that. So
you mentioned how devastating mold was, and it made me think of, like, when you think of the testing, because there's power in the testimony, right? And so just quick story, I had a gal, Casey, that was her name, and she lived in the state of Washington, and she had 3 kids, and her mom had to come live with her because she was so sick. She was thin, frail. She looked grayish. They basically described like she looked like she was dying. And she was in her early 30s and had 3 kids and was just desperate for trying to figure out what to do to get better. And I was the first person that ever mentioned, testing and checking for mold. And I remember the numbers because it was so profound. But the toxic level of the test we were doing at that time, the toxic level of ochratoxin A, which is an aspergillus mold, the toxic level 7.5, and she was 243. And that was just one mold toxin. She was actually toxic above the toxic level for 9 different mold markers, including trichothecene, which is black mold, and some of the worst ones.
Yeah.
So obviously somebody in that state is going to be sick, and they're probably living in it.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, this woman has her life back. I don't know if she ever finished it, but she told me she was writing a book called From Mold to Gold. She's a believer, loves the Lord. And this is kind of like what you were saying, like what is happening here, what we're doing is a miracle. Sometimes people think the only miracle is like, you lay of hands and God heals you, which is awesome. We know that happens.
Yeah.
That's real. That's true. That's biblical. But like a woman discovering why she's sick and doing what it takes to get well, God still healed that woman.
Yeah.
But she had to find out what was going on, get some guidance, get some wisdom. She had to do all the hard work. I just tried to educate her and guide her along the way. But now she's happy, healthy, writing a book, gets her life back. I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And I know you have those kind of stories too. It's awesome.
Amen. Yeah. So cool. Yeah. And it never gets old. Like, having those people and seeing them transform their life. It's like a miracle every single time. It's like, wow. Of course, yeah, why we do what we do. But yeah, I mean, that reminds me of when I was, because I've become somewhat of a mold expert just dealing with it so much over the years. But when I was first kind of learning about it, I had a lady that was somewhat similar, and she had been to medical doctors. Nobody ever mentioned mold. And I didn't initially, actually. We realized her liver and her body was congested, and we were working on them, and she was just not getting the full results we wanted. So I started learning about mold, and I was like, maybe we should check mold. And, other people in her work were getting sick too. So I was like, oh, something's going on there.
Yeah.
Checked mold, and she was just off the charts. And she had to go through quite a period because they found mold at their work, and multiple people in their work were getting sick, and with crazy stuff too. And then at her house too. And she was renting a house, and the landlord wouldn't deal with it right away. I think it took 6 or 8 or 9 months for him to finally deal with it. Yeah. And those are crazy situations, but finally dealt with it. And she got better even in the process. But I remember like, it just will always stick with me because she told me, I literally feel 1,000,000 times better. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, that's so cool. Like, yeah, I mean, when you're living in that toxic of an environment, she had other things going on too, but yeah, helping clear her body, get rid of that, helping her body come online, it is pretty amazing. So
what would you say you found some of to be the most effective like treatments or protocols that you see help people?
Yeah, for mold.
Yeah, for mold. Or just chronic illness in general, or mold.
Yeah, I mean, it's very individualized for the person, but we always want to lay the right foundation with the right, nutrients. A lot of times I'm supporting the mitochondria, giving them some mineral foundation or a nutritional support to cover different vitamins and B vitamins and stuff like that. Usually the deficiencies are caused by some of these toxins and infectious organisms, but it's good to supplement some of that stuff on the front end. And then we really need to, it's like sometimes we get these labs back with these crazy toxin and people want to go, all in on it, but you have to set them up for success and supporting the body's drainage pathways. Because a lot of these people, their pathways are so hindered. And so if you just don't, you go crazy at it, detoxing the body, a lot of times they can have bad results. So it's a lot of setting the right foundation, supporting the liver, I find is a big area where we need to support the liver, the bowels, a lot of people not having enough bowel movement. So this is part of our drainage pathway, supporting that. And then, using specific binders and detoxification agents that can go systemically. A lot of people are not using good quality binders. I mean, for a long time, people have used clay and charcoal and stuff like that. We know they're good, but they can't go systemically in the body. And these are also spent carbons. So they're great. They go through the gut and they bind to things, but they're basically grabbing everything in their way that they can. And they'll absorb toxins and stuff too. But to use more selective binders, different fulvics and carbons and, humics that can actually go and have been studied to bind to specific things, and there's tons of different, I forget the number, 17 tetratrillion, some crazy number like that of different fulvics and humics, and different ones do different things and they can bind onto different stuff. So that's why we love Cellcore. They have a lot of this research and using these powerful binders that, some are designed more for environmental toxins, some are designed more for mold mycotoxins, but the person still has to be able to handle it and support that. Right. So everybody needs a different level of support, but we also use additional therapies. I know that's something we're big on. Infrared sauna, really great because we can sweat out through the skin. Yes. Ionic foot detox and is very powerful, that can pull things out through the feet, but then also just mobilize toxins so the body can get them out. So yeah, lots of things like that. But yeah, and for each person, it's a different process. Some people, it takes a while to get out of this and their body's so depleted. But yeah, that's the basics of it. But obviously it's very complex in dealing with each person and walking them through it and seeing how their body responds and giving them extra support where needed. So
what do you usually work on first with people, like related to toxicity?
When it comes to toxins?
Yeah.
Somewhat depends on their labs, but I like to clear the mold mycotoxins earlier on. I mean, I'm dealing with a lot of stuff in the gut first, just because that's part of the drainage pathway. But then, a lot of mold mycotoxins initially. Usually wait a little bit later for some of the more toxic heavy metals or radioactive elements, stuff like that, just because they're even more toxic and trying to clear the path. I mean, mold mycotoxins are challenging too, but anyway, I found a lot of good results with clearing those up some and then diving in more deeper with the rest of the toxins. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, what are, I know you've been doing this quite a while, working with people. What are some of the most, you shared one story, but what are some of the most profound transformations and healing stories you've seen with people?
Man, a lot. Yeah. One of the gals at our office told me that I've seen over 10,000 people since I started in 2010, which kind of blew my mind.
Yeah. Wow.
Like in consultations. So there's a lot of stories. I love the fact that we get to work with people from 1 to like 101. Even though I haven't had 101, I did have a woman that was 93 who was bound and determined to get off her blood pressure med, and she did. Hallelujah.
Amen.
I think that was my most elderly client. But worked with a lot of infants. That's really rewarding to see children because they're really struggling. I'll never forget this little girl, 5 years old. And man, it's hard not to get emotional just like thinking about it, but like what some families go through, 5 years old, head to toe eczema. And so itchy, taking steroids, itching so bad it's bleeding.
Yeah.
Can't sleep through the night. So if she's not sleeping through the night, guess what? Nobody in the family's sleeping through the night. This went on for like 2 years, no answers. And when I started seeing her, first thing I did was our basic, this was even before Cellcore, children's 18-day parasite cleanse that we have. Put her on a children's parasite cleanse, 90% better.
Wow.
In 3 weeks after just doing one parasite cleanse, which tells you how big of an issue parasites are, right? It's a real thing. I would say the number one thing I've seen clear eczema in children and adults has been parasite cleansing. And I'm not saying that's the only cause of eczema, but
powerful.
Clinically you learn these things when you see thousands of people, And then I love the gal that I've been working with for a couple years, who is in her 70s, and she came to me on 18 meds, and she was just super motivated to get healthy. And we just met recently, and she's stuck on this one med. And I want to tell everybody you're on no meds. But sometimes it's hard mentally to feel like I'm off all meds. Because again, sometimes we've had this trust in the medical system and all these medications. And some people might not overly appreciate it, but like really one of my goals is to get people off of medications. And not everybody likes that idea. And I'm not saying it's easy. People are on seizure meds, people on antidepressants. It's like, there's real challenging cases.
Yeah, right.
But she was on 18 meds. She's down to 1. It's just 1 pill of this 1 med. And last time we talked, I really, really was like pushing her to like, you don't really need it. Come on, you can do it. But it's amazing, like, because when people go through this transformation like she has, everybody, like her family, her friends, you look so good. What are you doing? You have so much energy. You've lost so much weight. They're just like blown away. I don't ever do weight loss programs with women. They all just lose weight.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're getting healthy. They're getting well. They're getting toxins out of their body. All these weight loss programs, like, I don't want to be overly dogmatic, but they're not ideal. They're not ideal.
Not always a good way to lose weight.
No, it's better to get healthy and
Yeah.
to get well. And so, yeah, those are just a couple stories, but yeah, just so many good stories.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories you want to share?
Yeah. I guess a couple others that come to mind. There was a lady that was still fairly young, I think in her late 20s maybe, and with a couple kids. And she came to me talking about chronic fatigue, but she was extremely fatigued and brain fog and just not functioning well. She knew, like, I'm just not myself. I'm normally this peppy. She was trying to homeschool her kids and she was just struggling. And she's like, I know I can't be there for my family the way I want to. It's hard to get out of bed and do anything. And, this had happened within the last few years with her. And so we start going through the process and I start asking her questions about different things. Turned out they had some bad water damage. Water kept coming in through one area of their basement. And, and they had, I think, fixed the water leak, but I asked them if they dug into, like, looking into the walls, looking under it was under the wood floors. And so they actually went back and we tested her at first, I think, actually just to convince her and her husband of the seriousness of this. And she was crazy. I think like 26 times the toxic level of one particular mold mycotoxin, high on a bunch of other ones. But they ended up having somebody come in and looking under I don't know if it was hardwoods or tile or whatever, and it was just riddled with black mold. And so they ended up having to rip everything out, redo the floors. And so, and then I worked with her for a while and she got amazingly better. And she's one of my cool testimonies where she actually did a video for us. And, she told me, like, you gave me my life back. And I got to meet her the first time I met her husband. And I like telling this story. He's this big burly guy looking like a mountain man guy you'd see hunting in the woods. And he comes up to me and shakes my hand. And then he starts crying. And he's like, I want to thank you for giving me my wife back. And so then he's like making me cry. And so we're both crying together and just so powerful to not just hear it from her, but to hear it from him and the difference he saw in her just completely changing and turning around. I mean, she rated her fatigue like an 8 out of 10, 8 or 9 out of 10. And then when we were done, I think it was down to like a 2 out of 10 fatigue. Just, she wasn't perfect, but basically super high energy levels, able to function, able to, she's like, I'm able to function on little sleep, if I need to sometimes, and able to be there for her family again and all that. So, but yeah, seen a lot of cool situations with people with fibromyalgia. And, it's cool. The girl that works for us, Raina, she came to you originally.
Right.
And then she started working for us, and then I was helping her out for a while too, but she had MS and half of her body wasn't working for a while, and now she's fully functioning and passionate and helping other people with the same type of stuff. So yeah, it's just cool. But yeah, fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis and a lot of chronic fatigue. But yeah, just love to see that stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. We got another gal who works for us who was one of my clients and got better, and now she works for us, and it's just awesome to see. And then I love the gal who came to work for us who hadn't got pregnant in 5 years.
Yeah.
And I said, you can come work for us, but you're going to have a baby and you're going to leave us. And I think I joked that I had more faith about it than she did because she hadn't been pregnant in 5 years.
Yeah. And she was like told by multiple fertility people that she would never have kids,
She was infertile. Yep, exactly. Which, we speak life. We don't speak those things. We believe, right? So yeah.
And now I think, did she have her third kid now?
They've had 2.
Okay.
I don't know if the third's on the way, maybe, or
I think
I don't
heard
know.
She's pregnant, but anyway, so cool.
So just really cool story. So love that.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, it was good, Mike. Thanks for your chatting time.
Yeah. Amen.